Netflix documentary Cleopatra changed its main character to something she wasn't. I wasn't going to talk about it, and then I saw that the actress started to attack people on Twitter. I was actually very impressed with this tweet, because even though it's just a few lines, it was crammed with strategies, so I can only assume that manipulation comes naturally to her. But that's far from the only bit of drama surrounding this show, and wouldn't have been enough for me to cover it on its own, because at the end of the day, this kind of stuff isn't new. It was happening with Anne Boleyn. She got swapped to somebody that she physically couldn't have been. We had Queen Charlotte replaced as well, among many others. Now, England has a great history, so I can fully understand people being jealous that it's not theirs. But the thing was, no one was arguing that these shows were real. No one was actually that deluded, or ignorant, or insidious. And I kind of feel that's what Cleopatra is. I haven't quite decided which one of the three it is yet, and so far, I think it depends which one you talk to, because we've got a broad range of fools in this one. Because sure, we've got Adele here who hates their own customers. We've got Jada Pinkett Smith here who apparently wants to create a history, whether one exists or not. And this is just the part of the interview that Netflix wanted to show. When you actually go and find the full interview, where she says that the reason she wanted this to be a documentary rather than a narrative feature is because narratives, well, sometimes you want to take creative license and stretch ideas for a bit, whereas she really wants to stick to the historical facts of each woman involved. Which is an absolutely astonishing thing to say, especially when you follow it up with, "I wanted to be educated," and prove that you never were. But even those things fall to the wayside when you hear what people think reality is. And that actually objective reality doesn't exist. It's just your truth. It's what you think it is. And whatever you think it is, happened. That's how you get Adele James going, "Do go and engage with an expert opinion that's different than yours." That's right, she put expert in, so now you definitely can't disagree with it. It doesn't matter if you have the entire weight of history on your side. Don't worry, someone over there has got a degree and an opinion. And I have to say, when you see these so-called experts in the trailer, it just gets even worse.
It's possible that she was an Egyptian.
Possible she came from outer space. I mean, she didn't. But if I use enough weasel words like possibly to get this tiny fraction of, well, you don't know for sure, then I can just spin a false reality into existence based off absolutely no evidence at all.
I imagine her to have curly hair like me and a similar skin colour.
I imagine that she was a Ferrari F430 that flew through space. Just because you can imagine something doesn't actually mean it's reality, and in fact, your entire perception of the world is entirely irrelevant. This is the problem with telling kids they're the centre of the universe. They believe it and think that their perception can change factual history.
I imagine her.
I mean, honestly, that clip is so bizarre. I don't know whether he's an expert or just a guy they dragged in off the street and started asking him to describe his mum.
Curly hair like me and a similar skin colour.
But all of that seems sane compared to the next one.
I remember my grandmother saying to me, "I don't care what they tell you in school, Cleopatra was black."
Look, I always listen to my nan, and she said it doesn't matter what reality is. I know best. Don't listen to what anyone tells you with them factual history books. They're all lies. I mean, she might even be right in some cases, but unfortunately we'll never know. No one can hear her anymore. She's wrapped her head in too much tinfoil. Now, far be it for me to question the academic rigor of a documentary on Netflix, but I do think you have to draw the line somewhere, and I think as good a place as any as at the opinion of somebody's gran. But it's not to say the entire show is full of lies. They do get one thing right.
There was a time long ago when women ruled with unparalleled power as mothers of nations.
They did give birth to a lot of people. And if anything, I think the trailer was very open about why they're trying to spin this obvious lie to begin with.
There is no future without the past.
Because you build your future off your history. And if somebody else has got a history you want, well, just try and take it for yourself anyway. Gaslight people into believing that actually it's yours, and take the credit for it. It's an interesting act of thievery. It's just incredibly stupid. Not that we're dealing with potential Mensa candidates here. Remember, this is Jada Pinkett Smith we're talking about. This is a woman who couldn't even stay faithful to her husband, Will Smith, and then decided to bring him on her podcast to tell him all about it. We got to see a man break live on camera, and I think this is the exact second his soul left his body. So integrity, definitely not her strong point. In fact, you could say that she's willing to do whatever it takes to get what she wants. So with that in mind, her motivations become clear. She shed more light on the anticipated documentary, and when asked how did you go about picking the queens, she really wanted to represent black women. The sad part is, she doesn't have access to these historical women who were so powerful and were the backbone of nations, so I guess she decided to just make them up. Yes, this is a documentary which simply seems to come out of her own face, because while she did get interested in a few people, she loves to talk about how she is doing a purely factual show. She chose not to go with a narrative structure because that would mean that you could take a creative license, and that's not what she wanted to do. She wanted to stick to strict historical facts of each woman. And if the facts don't match the documentary that you want to make, well, I guess you can just change them. Like she did in her interview with Will Smith. Here she is describing what it's like to betray your husband.
Yeah, and then I got into an entanglement with August. That's what I said.
An entanglement?
Yes.
So is it any wonder that she has absolutely no idea how to accurately describe somebody who's Greek? Maybe that's why she finds that these stories actually aren't well known, because they've just been made up in her own head. And this is a particularly weird comment because it directly contradicts the trailer.
She has become an icon.
Her story resonates with every woman.
Maybe that is exactly why she chose the story, because this is a name that everybody knows, but aren't actually quite up to date with all of the information. They may not know all of the facts about her. This leaves a nice little grey area for you to sit in and then just lie to people who may well accept it as fact, especially when you pitch your show as a documentary. And so this is somebody who is apparently so important to so many people.
Resonates with every woman.
It allows you to rewrite history, change it, and then use that as the foundation for your supposed future.
There is no future without the past.
Maybe that's why she didn't choose any queens of England, because there's a lot of historical literature there, so everybody would have called her on her nonsense. Now the thing is, she probably doesn't know that there are actually statues of Cleopatra, but you know, this isn't a woman who's going to let something as basic as facts stand in the way of a good story.
An entanglement?
Yes.
That might be why it's so supremely important to her that it's a docudrama. Because if you take a topic that you think most people are ignorant in and tell them it's fact, then a lot of them are actually going to believe you, even when you're entirely wrong, or just pitch your lies with a load of weasel words.
It's possible.
I imagine her.
I remember my grandmother saying,
And as you go down, this whole thing just gets worse. Talk about how she was engaged in the casting. Her main thing was authenticity, authentically telling the narrative that she's trying to spin rather than historically, and apparently touched on some very sensitive subjects, which is probably why the Woman King rewrote history in that regard as well. It is unfortunate for a lot of nations that the English kept such great records. Although I did find it funny when she said she was really hoping to break some stereotypes. And like, you will definitely do that if you're trying to appropriate Greek culture as your own. No one's going to see that coming in a stereotype. But most surprising of all is when she said she wanted to break the stereotype about what black Africans are. Largely, the stereotype that they would have to be African. Yes, bizarrely, Jada is taking pride in this, despite the fact that I would be incredibly offended, because what you're actually doing is implying that African history isn't interesting enough on its own, and so you've got to take somebody else's instead. Personally, if I was from there, I would be incredibly offended and very angry with you. But then again, does she really need more people angry with her? Especially when she's already getting sued by the Egyptians for changing their history and claiming it as fact, saying that most of the Netflix platform doesn't actually conform to Egyptian values and principles, which isn't surprising, this is Netflix. Did they have any values and principles? And said that it contradicted Egyptian history, and is in fact, by any definition of the word, colonialism. Personally, I can't wait to see what documentary Jada makes next. Maybe she could even star with one and be the first man on the moon. One small step for man, one giant lie for mankind. And if I was an actor in a documentary and therefore wanted it to make money, I wouldn't be telling my customers to sod off. Largely because it seems like they're doing that already. And so you're going to need everyone to stick around that you physically can, because the audience have been making their voices heard, with 25,000 upvotes to 295,000 downvotes, with 2.3 million views. And how did this result? Did Netflix go, okay, we've listened to you, and we're just going to fire everyone involved in the production? Because this is obviously factually wrong, and the very reason for the existence of this show hasn't been fulfilled. No, Netflix didn't do that. Instead, they stopped people talking about it. Yes, while one actress is attacking the fans, you've got Netflix silencing them on the trailer. Because the one thing everybody involved in this seems to despise is anybody pointing out the truth. Even says here, comes a new documentary series. Our series will reassess this fascinating part of her story. They are going to actively lie to people about it and then prevent anyone from correcting them. I don't see how those actions can be taken as anything other than malicious against Egyptian culture, and I can fully understand why they're getting sued. I'm just not sure if malicious hatred against Egyptian culture is something you can actually sue for, but it's Egyptian law, I don't know. But of course, as always, you would expect the machine just to keep on grinding and silence people who are speaking out against it. There was a change.org campaign which actually got removed, apparently believing in facts actually violates Change.org's community guidelines, which is an interesting policy to have. Because back in the day, there was actually uproar that Gal Gadot actually got hired as Cleopatra. But of course, people like Jada wouldn't have quite the same energy for one as the other, despite the fact that Gal Gadot would be far more accurate than the actress she's actually hired. But of course, everybody knows the truth. This is simply about the narrative that you can spin. We're going to call it fact, but we all know it isn't. Maybe that's why Adele's tweet was framed in such a manipulative way, because she found a couple of tweets to put them up and use them as a shield, as if anyone that's criticizing me at all are just like these people, and you don't want to be like them, do you? And we've seen this time and time again, the classic example being Obi-Wan Kenobi.
It seems that some of the fan base have decided to attack Moses Ingram online. Horrendous, racist DMs. You're no Star Wars fan in my mind.
If you have a problem with the people who made the tweets, message them. You wanted to use it as a way of slurring others, to make it seem like anyone who disagrees with the casting are just like the people engaging in this. It was to attach the two, to blur the lines, to make it seem that anyone who disagreed with the casting is motivated by the same reason as the people I'm calling out now. When the simple thing is, this isn't about a casting. This is about historical accuracy. This is about fact. You're putting yourself as the factual person that looked like Cleopatra. This isn't a question of the best person for the job. This is a point about actually lying about history and getting it wrong, while telling everyone that you're the actually correct person. That's why we dragged a guy off the street to talk about his mum in the trailer.
Curly hair like me and a similar skin colour.
Because you come at this, not as if it's actually history, not as if it was a reality that happened, but as if everything is just cut down to opinion. This is my truth, and my truth is different than yours, and that somehow morphs the world around me. So arrogant, so egotistical, so center of the universe, that you can't even understand that an objective world exists. No, of course I look like Cleopatra because I have that opinion. And don't worry, I don't care how ignorant or wrong I am, because I'm just gassed and will continue to be, because don't you understand, I got paid. I may be telling my customers to not watch the show. I may be costing Netflix millions by making a tweet telling their customers not to watch the show, but I don't care. I'm gassed and will continue to be. She doesn't care how much money she costs Netflix. That's Netflix's money, not hers. And generally, the correct response to somebody blatantly wasting your money and scaring off your customer base that you need to make a profit, you'd fire that worker immediately. And yet, here we are. Why? Because this isn't a documentary about the truth. It's about building the future off a past.
There is no future without the past.
Resonates with every woman.
And we don't care what past it is, we don't care whether it actually happened. All we want is a story to build off. Because this isn't about the truth. What it is for Jada is about hearing stories about people she wants to hear about. She thinks it's really important for her and her daughter and her community, I suppose her next door neighbours or something, and it doesn't seem like she cares whether these stories actually exist or not. If they don't exist, she's gonna make them up. And we're gonna call it factual history, because she just assumes everyone in the audience is incredibly ignorant and thick, so they won't know they're being lied to in the first place. That, or she just thinks they'll be very easily subdued, which, to be fair, she's probably very used to, being married to Will Smith.
Bad marriage for life.
That's terrible.
And I guess she thinks for everyone else, a couple of slurs will do. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe, more videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.